Howdy, and welcome to another Gear Talk. We do this every Thursday at 5 p.m. I don't know what else to tell you. The lights aren't on back here. My hair's not tied up. I'm wearing a damaged Hawaiian shirt, if you can't tell. We're talking about Jace one more time, and I mean, this isn't the last. I'm sure I'll have another thing to talk about, but oh my god. I talk about Jace so much on this channel. The guy should be the main character, which in the comics, essentially, he is. But it's just so much. I'm getting tired of it, really. Like, I sat here getting ready for this video. This one was already planned because of, like, everything involving Hollows, everything we've covered. Let's cover everything. Just the channel itself involving Jace, shall we? You know, we've already done the Shadow of Rom playthrough, a Rom Shadow. We've done that. Gears of War 3, Jace is in that. He's gotten his own character discussion. We did the canonical and non-canonical events in the story. He comes up in there. You talk about any member of Zeta, like Barrick or anybody, he comes up there. We have talked so much about this man. I'm getting real tired of it. I don't even dislike Jace. I'm okay with Jace. I don't think he's a bad character. I think he's well written, and I think he's okay. He's like an average, like above average character. Let's say he's good. He's fine. But I am so tired of talking about him. I love Dizzy. Why can't I talk about Dizzy all the time? Anyway, okay, this video is going to cover a lot of stuff, and we're going to not talk about Jace for a while. Okay, let me just put the Lancer away. Let me just get myself in the spirits we normally have. Whew. Here we go. Today we're going to talk about the timeline of Jace, or at least like the events that lead into everything for his continuity, so that we have a grounded, here's everything you need to know about Jace, here's like the official story of Jace. Yes, we have some things that come up now and then, like in Hollows when he meets Barrick for the first time, which we know that is not true. We have all of these different scenarios that involve Jace where we have to wonder, okay, did this happen? Did this? What's going on? Well, we're going to cover it all here, and I'm even going to put his age next to everything so we can at least kind of like put everything together, like what we did when we talked about Reyna's history, you know, kind of put things together so we have like a grounded, like here's how old he is currently, here's where it started, so we at least have a more fun time putting it all together. And actually starting off with everything, we got to start at the beginning when we meet Jace for the first time, and this is over in Alima when we meet little tiny 8-year-old Jace. So this is the beginning of everything, and honestly for his whole history, the only time it's confusing is the very first third of everything. The first third is like the weird part, and then after that things kind of like fall together. But at 8 years old, this is when we first meet Jace, and we see him just a child. This is when E-Day occurs, and he loses his family, and that actually shifts us to the next form of everything. When we meet him again after his childhood, we meet him over when he is 17 years old. This is 9AE, and I'm not really going to put the years on here for many of these, but 9AE is when he is 17 years old, and he is at the orphanage. So he's been at the orphanage for roughly 9 years with Dr. Wizen. And he meets Zeta Squad here, and this is when he decides formally, like, I'm going to become a Gear. He already kind of had that inkling throughout his life, especially when he meets, like, the other Gears that saved him when he was a child, but he really comes into it when he fights alongside Zeta, and he meets Barrick, Alicia Valera, Ty, Kim, he meets all of them, and he's like, this is my calling. When I turn 18, because normally you got to be 18 to join, I am going to officially become a Gear and enlist to fight the Locusts. And this video is going to be really quick. We're just going to cover the bullet points of everything because I don't know what else to say about Jace that we haven't already covered in so many other videos. So we're really just going to put together the actual canonical like history of him. Now, canonically wise, this is when we go to the next portion of his story, which is actually during the Slab. This is where things are going to get confusing. In the Slab is where we meet him in 10 AE. So he is now 18, and this is where he is already enlisted and fighting alongside Ty, Dom, and Marcus. Now 10 AE is when the treasonous act of Marcus with the whole bridge and he left to go and help out Adam. That all occurs here. And Jace is there for all of it. He's seen and like he's experiencing all of this with everyone else. So all of this happens, and this is like, we don't even know if this is his first mission. But all of this goes down, and he's with, like, the remnants of Delta during all this later on. Like, there is a plan to break Marcus out of prison. A prison break is planned. He is a part of that and well aware of that. He is with the rest of, like, the pseudo-Delta planning a prison break. Now, that doesn't happen because we learn in Gears of War 1 and we learn through the Slab. He actually gets out because Dom goes and gets him when it's 14 AE. So, that all happens. Now, before we actually get to getting Marcus broken out of prison, we actually have to talk about where Jace goes next, because as you'll remember in the beginning of Gears of War, it is Kim, Dom, and Anthony that go and get him. It is not Ty, and it is not Jace. So, what's going on? Well, we learn where he is at this time, or at least a little bit before he's broken out, 2 months before the events of the first game in 14AE. He is actually with Midnight Squad, and they are set to defend a bridge. Go figure, that is also what his quote-unquote first canonical mission we see him on is, but he is here to defend this bridge, and like I said, it's a little confusing at the beginning because he states here that he was green and he wasn't out of basic by that much. We know that's a crock, though, because of the fact that he was already out and about as of the age of 18. At this point, he is 22. So I had to look it up and see if there's like an actual time frame in the military people are considered green or rookies or new, and there really isn't a definitive answer. I always go by a year. That sounds about right, but it can vary. So I don't know, maybe they always saw him as the newbie even 4 years later, but he most definitely was not out of basic. For all I know, maybe he went back to basic. Maybe he went back to go do basic all over again. I'm not so sure. It's Jace we're talking about. Anything is literally possible with him, with his time frame. But he goes through and does Midnight, and he's with everyone else. He's with Gil, you know, the guy he was in basic with that coming up. He was also in Hollows. You know, this is where he has his mission. He comes not face to face, but he sees Rom for like the first time, pseudo kind of. They don't even know if Rom was there. I don't even think it's ever stated he saw him through the dark. But Rom was there. And then after all of that happens, we actually jump to the Quickening. Now the Quickening is all about Ty. So the Quickening takes place a month after the events of Midnight, but a month before Gears of War. He is here on the squad with Marcus, Ty, and Dizzy is here. I have no clue how that works. We covered it in Dizzy's video. My assumption is maybe instead of basic, because he was a part of the Lifeboat Initiative and formerly stranded, maybe the COG were just like, you know what? Throw him on a mission out with all the other gears. We'll get him thrown into the fire where he can learn basic. Maybe that's what it was. He had one mission with Delta before they said, okay, you passed, your basics are good, you're going to go to the engineering now. See you later. That's my best guess. But he was there, and he was traveling with Delta. So he was with Delta, placed over with Midnight, then placed back on Delta. My assumption is maybe they just needed him on, like they were pulling people together for the Midnight operation, and they put him on Midnight. That's like the best guess I have for that one. So, and then they like put him back on Delta. So then they take him off of Delta again, but they don't say where he went off to, which is weird. I'm assuming they put him over with his other squad that he has later on. We learn in Gears of War 2, but that can't be right because after Gears of War 1, we actually see him over back with Delta. So they must have taken him off for something. I'm assuming with Delta, it was a special mission that Kim was in charge of, and they must have thought like, okay, we need to throw Kim on this mission, and he's going to have these guys together, and they're getting Marcus out. So like, when it comes to like Ty and it comes to Jace, they can't be on this mission or something. I'm assuming that's what it is. Again, we're piecing together pieces that either don't exist or we're making ourselves here. So after that's done in Gears of War 1 and all that's hunky-dory and good, then we leave that situation and we jump into Hollows. Now Hollows we already covered earlier with little kid Jace. He's introduced as a child, but now we get actual Jace where he is roughly, as it says right here, he would still be 22 years old. So he's still 22 at this point. All this is still taking place. And Hollows is where we have the whole adventure where he goes through, they gotta get to Montevideo, all of this is going on, and this is where we get more situations like where he comes across Barrick, and they act like they first met, but that is not true. They met over in Rom Shadow is the first time with Zeta Squad, so he very much knows who Barrick is. Again, all of this we're kind of putting together because some of this came out before other material did. For instance, Hollows came out before Rom Shadow, so technically by release date, that'll be the first time, but Rom Shadow is canonically the first time they have ever met. So, and in the story too, they never, and I give a full breakdown in Jace's video and Barrick's about how like it kind of sort of works if you really, really, really want to make it, but we're not here to really argue what is or isn't. We're just kind of trying to glue everything to have one consecutive line for all of Jace's history. Once everything is done with the Hollows series, we actually jump over, and this is like a one-time comic. It's very hard to find, but I do own it, to One Day. So this is basically just covering like Dom and like his inner turmoil and like a pseudo history of his family and like what happened to Benedicto and Sylvia and all that stuff. But Jace is here, still a part of Delta. This is like 1 month after Hollows, so I figured I would just mention it because he is seen here, still a part of Delta. So one day, we're not going to cover it long, just he was there. There's nothing crazy or fancy that happens here. He's just still fighting with Delta. From one day, we actually jump over to Baron now. Okay, Baron actually happens between 1 day and 2. There's not an exact time frame given, but it's between 1 and 2. So, Baron is all about him still with Delta, and they have to go to Jelaine and actually figure out something that's going on there with, like, a signal that's going on for, like, a lot of things. There's a lot of information. We haven't touched on Baron yet in the comic discussion, so I don't want to like give away too much here. But essentially, they are going there with Sigma and Foxtrot in order to kind of figure out what's happening. This is like falls right in place with the timeline wise. There's nothing really crazy here. The real crazy stuff is at the beginning of his time. So here it's really like step by step, pretty easy to follow. So they go over to Jelaine, and that's where the events of Baron happen. I don't really want to spoil anything that comes up there. After that, we actually get Gears of War 2. He makes a very subtle appearance, but he makes a more prominent appearance in Harper's story. Now, Harper's story and Gears of War 2 kind of happen at the same time, so we're kind of just going to talk about it all together in one. With everything that happens in the events of 2 and Harper's story, we have it where Alpha 7 is sent down. He's a part of Alpha Squad now. He's actually been given command of his own squad. So that's interesting because after the events with Delta, they take him off of Delta and actually promote him and say, hey, we're going to give you your own squad now, Alpha Squad. So he's given Alpha, and they are sent down to the Hollows along with everyone else for Hollow Storm. So they continue to fight their way through. They're having like a grand old time, Cog versus Locust. Yeah, you love to see it happen. When they actually come across a survivor that was also sent down, and that is Harper. So Harper actually joins in with Jace, and Alpha continues to fight through. They do make it out of the Hollows, where they actually do make it onto the Raven, and they do fly off. So they do escape, except for Harper, but we'll cover all of that later on when we get to that portion. They cover escaping, and then when they finally get out of there, they actually make it out, and they make it with everyone else where they go to Port for All. And at this point of the story, we hit 15 AE, and that is when Jace turns 23. Jace, along with everyone else, is at the port for a very short amount of time when they learn about the winter months coming up and how bad it's going to get there. So everyone decides to head over to Vectis, where we actually get the events of Anvil's Gate and Coalition's End. They go there, and we actually see that there's still a thriving community there, and Jace is kind of just like the backup soldier within the next bit for the stories. So it's kind of like Jace is there, but he's not doing anything major. For instance, like he's told to like guard the naval base. So he's there guarding the base. Now he does interact with everybody, but there's nothing big that comes up in the story that would affect his time with everyone or that we have to say is a continuity error or anything. Everything's pretty straightforward here. So he's there like on the base, like guarding, or he's told to help Baird figure out something that's going on with the ships, or he's told to help with like construction work. He's never given anything big until we get to like Coalition's End. Coalition's End, very long story for people who don't read the book. The Grozny are still around. The Grozny team up with the Cog. There's actually the Emerald Spar, which is actually an emulsion rig out in the ocean that the Grozny have. And they actually have it where it's attacked by the Lambent, where you have the Cog go and assist, and that is where Jace actually also goes to assist. They call him in for backup. Jace is there, fights the good fight, ends up saving some of the civilians that are on there that are Grozny. The Grozny do not F around. They are some powerful civilians. And they get out of there. They lose the Emerald Spar, but they are able to save people. And he is there for the final battle that happens against the Lambent. It's just a big old shootout. And because of the fact that we do have Gears of War 3 with him in it, he does survive. Taking us to Gears of War 3, where it's 17 AE now, and he has now hit 25 years old. So, between the events of when he's first enlisted from 18 all the way to now 25, he has seen quite a bit of action. I believe that is 8 years worth of action. So 25, you had 5 years there for 18. Yeah, so he's seen roughly seven years of action, and he's already gone through all this just in his, not even a decade yet, and he's only 25. In Gears of War 3, we see that during Coalition's End, everyone goes off on their own directions and follow their own separate leaders. We have it where Jace actually stayed with Delta, and they stayed upon the Sovereign. the ship that's floating around that's led by Michelson. So we see that he decided to stay there, and when everything goes foobar and the Lambent attack once again, he is a part of the major journey to go through and get everyone over to Azura, where we have all the events of 3. There's a lot of stuff he's involved with, but nothing, again, that's really crazy. And, well, all of it's crazy during 3. It's literally the end of world, basically, battle. But he does make it to V-Day, where they all celebrate. He is one of the survivors, one of the only 1% of the human population that made it out. And we do actually have it where it cuts 25 years later into the time of peace, which I believe, if my math is correct, that is 42 AE. By 42 AE, Jace is now 50 years old. We have the events of Gears 5, where he is first referenced once again. We never get anything from him 4, but he is referenced, and we learn that Jace is alive, and he is doing well. He has retired from the military at the age, well, very early on. He is 50 right now, but he is still prominent 50, where he is currently an actor in the arts. He has his own studios and everything, and we see that he was actually over at one of the settlements when he was evacuated, and he accidentally left behind Barrick's lighter. So we do pick it up and we put it on the memorial for Barrick, but Jace is still alive and active at the age of 50. And that will be the entire timeline of Jace Stratton. It is a quicker video than I normally do. I did not want to sit on Jace much longer. Here we are. This basically just covers just the real cliff notes of his history. I just wanted to talk about it so you have the continuity of everything so you can see how it flows together. There are a lot of details that come up with Jace throughout the story that kind of contradict one another. So these are the main bullet points so you have Jace in the story. So even though like in Midnight he says he is new out of basic, that is not true. He has been going on for about 4 years in combat before he was a part of Midnight. Whatever the military wants to say is new, or green, or rookie, I don't know. But apparently 4 years, he still considers himself a rookie. Maybe he's just being humble to himself. So, that'll do it for everyone. A very quick and a very kind of like on-the-spot video. Like I said, I didn't set up anything for this. I just figured this is on my list. I wanted to get it done. Here we are. So, if you don't really care about Jace, I'm sorry you sat through this. But I figured we'll cover this and be done with it. So, thank you all for watching. I want to thank everyone for making things possible. Thank the patrons for making things possible. I will see you all in the next video. Later.